No, we're
No,
still working on that. Yeah. It's a pass-through issue. We'll try and get it resolved. Yeah. Doing the agenda, it's underneath your.
There's a paper one.
Yeah, there's a paper.
I'll just
Yes,
use this
Matt.
one. All one.
Good evening. We will be conducting tonight's meeting in a live and virtual setting using Zoom. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live tonight on WAVE Channel 18 and online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. If you would like to participate in live public comment via the Zoom platform, please follow the instructions on the agenda. Council member Andriotta will be giving the invocation this evening and the mayor will begin the meeting immediately after.
All right, let's pray. Lord, we just thank you for bringing us all here safe. We're grateful that we are back in person. We ask, Lord, that you just keep everybody healthy and safe. We ask that your presence be with us in this meeting as people share their thoughts and opinions and we hear presentations, Lord. Let good decisions be made tonight and let us all leave this room on good terms with each other. So we ask for your peace and your direction and your wisdom in the name of Jesus. Amen. It's 6 o'clock right now.
So I have 6 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. Can I get a roll call?
Yes, council member Andriotta,
Here.
council member Joyner, council member Carlskit,
Here.
council member Lauritsen,
Here.
and Mayor Silhai.
A report from closed session.
We did not have closed session.
All right, we'll move along to Pledge of Allegiance and Mark Scott will be.
Thank you. It's so exciting to be able to invite a live audience to join us in honor of Flag and Country. I pledge allegiance
to the
Flag of the United States of America,
and to the
republic for which it stands,
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. And it is so nice not to have that Zoom offset of voices while you're trying to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mark. That felt wonderful.
Yes.
Be back in person. All right, we'll move on to agenda modifications. Do any of my colleagues have modifications for tonight's agenda? All right, seeing none. We'll move on to presentations. We do not have any presentations tonight, so we'll move on to the non-agendized public comment. We will be taking public comment from the attendees on the first floor overflow area, those that are attending via Zoom and those attending in council chambers. So kind of a lot of different areas going on tonight, so bear with us and we have a little patience while we try and figure it out. Ms. Scanlon, do we have public comment?
Yes, Mayor. So we do have 3 speaker cards. Stan Nader. We'll have her time on the screen as well.
Council members. Third, I sent an email to the interim city manager. He hasn't had an opportunity yet to respond. I wanted to share with him the results of the survey that the city did relating to the citizens' willingness to take an increased assessment. I was sure that staff had probably shared the report with him, but I thought it was important for him to know recommendation that he was given by the consultant at the end of this presentation. And that was that he needed to start immediately information campaign to inform the citizens why they needed to support an increased assessment. Unfortunately, even though it was listed in your priorities this January, I have not been aware of anything that the city has done in relation to encouraging the citizens to support that increased assessment. That brings me to my other issue that I wanted to address, and that is our fire department. On July 4th, over a 3.5-hour period, there were seven overlapping calls. 1 CPR, 3 fire, 2nd CPR, 2 additional medical aids, and 1 smoke investigation. CAL FIRE was the first to 3 of the calls, and Rockland was the first to 2 of the calls. We are sorely understaffed. I realize you know that, but we need to address this issue sooner rather than later. I know you're going to say, well, we got the SAFER grant coming, but that's only a short-term fix. It's only for 3 years. And I'm a big fan of bird in the hands worth 2 in the bush. So I was disappointed when the budget meeting, when the fire department had been promised 3 firefighters, it got changed to 1 battalion chief, because they're obviously looking for boots on the ground. And I spoke with one of the fire department folks yesterday, and they have 2 out on medical leave. And he told me that that's put extreme stress on the remaining firefighters. So I would hope that there's something that we can do. I have yet to see a person on the economic development manager's website as to who is in charge of economic development. We need to put a full court press on bringing more business so we have more sales tax. And I hope that the staff has made you aware of a scoping meeting on Thursday for the county for Bickford Ranch Marketplace, 10 acres, the corner of Highway 65, 193 and Sierra College Boulevard, 10 acres of commercial with a gas station with 18 pumps. I can hear the sucking sound of sales tax out of the Lincoln. I certainly hope that we are advocating with the county for some kind of tax sharing agreement. So please do something for our firefighters. We need it. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a speaker on Zoom, Mr. Herrick, Mike Herrick. Please go ahead. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yes. My comment was going to be around Village 27. Do you want me to hold that or speak now?
Yes, yes, sir. No, that will come during that item. Thank you. Next, we have Albert Schreiber.
Yeah, good evening. Where's my clock at?
Right.
Thank you. Albert Schreiber, Moore Road. First, I'd like to say thanks for getting us back in person. Been waiting quite a while for that. Looks like you got the Zoom worked out, which we were told was impossible. So mission accomplished there. Thank you for that too. I'd also like to thank the fire department, kind of coattailing off of Mr. Nader's comments. 4th of July, there was a fire out by our place, and they weren't the only ones there. I don't know how many different engines were there. There was a lot of them, but anyway, kudos to the fire department for getting on it relatively quick, considering all the chaos that was going on that night. Now I'd like to dive into the last city council meeting. There was a presentation for Sigma, and Trevor Joseph was the presenter for that presentation. After the presentation, I asked 3 what I thought were simple questions. My mind, they could have been answered really quick right there on the spot. Mr. Bermudez didn't want to answer any questions apparently. So they said he'd get back to us. And then following that, Ms. Lebowski asked that she get the answers too to the questions I had. So then there was discussion among staff and council about how to get that out, how to get those answers out, so on and so forth. Spent more time monkeying around with that than you could have just answered the stupid, easy questions I asked, in my opinion. But anyway, I got a response from Mr. Bermudez on Friday, basically telling me to contact Mr. Joseph to get my questions answered. So once again, I don't know why you couldn't allow the questions to be answered that night. See, I'm running out of time, but anyway, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have John Fett.
Hi, my name is John Fett. I'm glad to be here, Mayor, council members. A lot of you know me. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee. Strangely, this is the first time I've ever come before you as the chair of the Economic Development Committee to offer you some economic development requests and advice. First, I'd like to meet. Our meetings have been tabled. We have a lot to do as an Economic Development Committee. The city is not allowing us to meet. I'd like you to direct the city manager to agendize our meetings. We have one coming up on August 17th as scheduled, but we'd like to start meeting at least every month. We have a lot of ideas and a lot of things we want to accomplish, and we're not able to accomplish those things. As you know, we've also never presented to you any of our findings. We'd like to get agendized on the council at least once a quarter, if not more. And we'd like to be able to come to get agendized when we request, not when someone cares to allow us to come. We've never been allowed to come. So we'd like to have that. Secondly, what I'd like to say to you today is we've separated our Economic Development Committee into 3 groups so we can have working groups. So we've continued to work for the last 4 months while we have not been allowed to meet. As you know, I'll give you a good example of what we've done. The Placer County Grand Jury had a big fact-finding tour of the Lincoln Airport. They said, oh, the Lincoln Airport's not being run very well. It needs to be run better. Here's a strange and interesting fact. Not a single person from Lincoln was on the grand jury. Here's another interesting fact. The city of Lincoln has paid $5 million into the airport. 100 pilots, $50,000 a pilot. I would submit to you that we have 640 acres, a square mile out there, and you're going to be asked to pave a new runway in the next year or so. And I want to tell you something. It's the biggest mistake I believe we could make. I'm not done with my analysis and I'm not done with my study, but here's my initial findings. The airport will never make a nickel. They'll never pay back the $5 million to the city of Lincoln. And Stan, if we took that land and we properly planned it, properly serviced it, Steve would know how to do that. I could help him. We would have ongoing revenue for industrial, residential, commercial development out there. That land could be worth $100 million or more. Imagine Lincoln without an airport. Imagine Lincoln with a community center. Imagine Lincoln with a brand new police station. Imagine Lincoln with all the things that we don't have. It is my job. Paul, I see you're unhappy, but I'm sorry. This is what I've found. I've been out there twice in the last few months, and I've gone over this thing time and time again. My point is this. My goal is to take Lincoln and make it the most prosperous city, municipal city in the city of Placer, in the whole Placer County area, instead of the poorest. We have things, I see things people don't even know exist as problems. Putting the high school, for example, on our best interchange where we should be having 300, 400 over, well, $3 to $5 million a year in revenue coming from that area. That high school should be like where Whitney is. It should be mid-block off Joyner Avenue somewhere. I mean, we are making so many mistakes in this community. And I have been on this EDC for 2 years. I have never had a chance to tell you guys anything. I have a lot to say and I want to start saying it. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes. Please, I'm sorry, please refrain from clapping. We may have a lot of public comments, so please just be courteous. That was the end of public comment.
All right, we will move along to the consent
Can I ask a question real quick, very quickly?
very quickly.
John, are you speaking as chair of the Economic Development Committee, and has your committee authorized you to say the things you said?
I'm as an individual.
That's not how you presented yourself.
Okay.
No, no,
Fine.
it's okay.
So clarified that you're like for public record that it's John Fett individual, not John Fett. Okay, helpful. Thank you.
And Mark, when feasible, this is the first I've heard that they're not being,
Oh, let's take it offline.
no, this is, it's important to be here.
But it's not agendized, so we can't talk about it now. We can agendize it another time to talk about it. Correct, Christine? Okay,
Mayor, I'm sorry, we did have a hand come up on Zoom.
that's fine. We can.
Mr. Garabedian, please go ahead. Mr. Garabedian, please unmute yourself.
Well, thank you. I was anticipating the consent agenda, not this item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, now let's move along to the consent agenda. I'll read my normal. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine business and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the city council or resident requests a specific item be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the remainder of the consent agenda. Do any of my colleagues wish to remove an item?
Madam Mayor, 8I, please.
Anyone else on the council? Karen, Phil? No. Any member of the public wishing to remove?
Mr. Garabedian, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes,
Which item?
this is Mike Garabedian. Item 8H, the $18 million contract with the developer.
Okay, thank you.
And Ms. Scanlon, did we have other ones that were pulled?
I don't see any other cards for.
All right, do I have a motion for the remainder?
So moved.
Can I get a roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Joyner.
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskin.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
All right, let's move along to 8I. Oh, I'm sorry, 8H. Thank you. All right, this is a resolution approving an acquisition agreement for California Statewide Communities Development Authority Statewide Community Infrastructure Program, main financing for the Meadowlands project. Mr. Scott, would you like to give a brief staff report on it, or would you like to hear the question first?
Maybe we can hear the question. We'd be
Right.
happy to explain the program.
Let's do that.
Go ahead, Mr. Garabedian.
Thank you. Michael Garabedian, Lincoln. Well, I'm curious about how many of these contracts we have. I've been doing my best to follow the financial reports and so forth. I've noticed, I've been to the last two of the finance committee meetings. I haven't seen this on their agenda. And I'm wondering how this compares to the California Municipal Financing Agency, if it's the same thing. That's the city's Joint Powers Authority, and this is different. And both of them involve Mello-Roos. So I'm trying to understand what the comparison is there, and I'm trying to understand both of the projects and how they work. Actually, for the bonds. Now it's a 16-page contract, so I don't think it should have been on consent. I'm just wondering how it was put on consent. It seems like a major issue, and the question about, it looks like it's an 18. The contract is with the developer. I'm just wondering if it's the first. If it's not the first one, I'm wondering how others have fared, and if there could be some kind of general explanation of how it works and how long it takes, if the city's bond rating relates to these contracts and like in this case, an $18 million infrastructure grant, I guess you might call it. So yeah, I have some general questions like that, and I wish I'd had a chance to, but I didn't, to discuss it ahead of time. But those are my questions. It just generally seems like a pretty major thing to have without more explanation. And I think those questions would at least help me understand it. Thank you.
I don't know how many of these we've done, but we've done others, right? You have
I was trying to jot down the list. We've done at least 5 to date since 2019, since we adopted a resolution to join both Skip and Volt.
yeah, what this program is it's a program that the state of California authorized years ago now. It's administered by the CSCDA, which is California State Communities Development Authority, that it incentivizes the creation of housing in California. It provides an opportunity for developers of property of housing to join into a pooled financing situation where they get a favorable rate and they get a quicker, it's a quicker process than doing project by project financing. The city does not incur any financial liability for this. Any city that has this occur in their boundaries has to approve it, but it is not something that goes on our books. It doesn't affect our bond rating. It doesn't become a debt of the city of Lincoln. It's just something that has to go through a city for approval to occur. It is a process by which a debt is created. The developer is able to finance various types of infrastructure. In this particular case, we are not allowing them to finance DIF fees, developer impact fees. We're allowing them to finance other public improvements that are developer incurred costs, but we're not allowing in this case the financing for any of the developer impact fees. The reason that matters is that when a city allows that, the city is obligated to see that those funds are spent within a certain time period. And there's potential for having to refund in those cases. So we're not allowing that. So the risk to the city is negligible. I'm sure that's why it's on consent calendar. I thought it was a good question, and I'm glad we had a chance to answer it.
Thank you. Let's take public comment on that. Do we have any hands or anyone? No. All right. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt resolution 2021-140, approving the acquisition agreement for California Statewide Communities Development Authority's statewide community infrastructure program financing for the Meadowlands project. Second.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
All right, we'll move on to 8I. This is a resolution making appointments to the Placer County Homeless Advisory Committee that Councilmember Joyner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I rarely, if ever, do this. I'm going to request that I be considered for this committee for a number of reasons. A simple and minor one up front is that Dan and Bill were appointed to COJA. The two of you were appointed to oversee the city manager recruitment. And I've not taken an appointment. In fact, I've lost an appointment to the Tahoe Truckee Airport Land Use Commission along the way. I think more than that, I think it's absolutely essential if this is to be something different than what has always been done, which is a gathering of folks who put together a report that sits on a shelf and no action is taken. This needs to be at least one of our representatives, I think both, frankly, need to be very passionate about this, very driven, connected, aware of what's been done in the past, and driving this. And we can come up with a great program, but if there's no funding for it, it's meaningless. So I would request that, Madam Mayor, you reconsider the appointments, and I would request that I sit on this committee, please.
Can you remind me of all the other committees that you're sitting on? Just because I do we're trying to keep it.
Off of the top of my head, I think with the exception of Airport Committee is the only
Development.
I'm sorry, Airport Committee, Economic Development. Right, those are the two, city, SACOG, PCTPA. Again, it's off the top of my head. Gwen, you got it?
Yeah, I'm looking right now. So we have PCTPA, SACOG, Sparta, PCWA, City. And then we have a number of alternates. So you're the alternate for the air quality, the economic development, and the homeless committee. We had proposed that it be
Alternate.
mayor, vice mayor, and then you're next as vice mayor. So you would be the alternate. And then
This is a very short term.
Placer,
This goes through December, I believe,
and then the Placer Conservation Authority, you're an alternate.
which no longer exists. Well, the PCA exists, that's true. CCP no longer exists.
Did you find out about?
You know, I did try to ask, and I don't know, Gwen, if you were given the information when we tried to find out the details of pertaining to the duration of meetings, the timing of meetings. I did reach out to the county, but I was not able to get. a
Yeah,
response.
I
So
didn't.
here's what I would say.
I was trying to see if that would maybe change the discussion in terms of it being, but I didn't get a response back.
Understood. Here's what I would say. If I'm sitting on this, I'm going to insist that they study best practices, that they make field trips to those facilities that are successful, that everybody sees that. So it's not just going to be, I have anything to say, a afternoon or an evening. It's going to be a very active committee.
Right, well, we're just trying to figure out what time of the day the meetings would be, right? So I'm very interested in being on this, but again, as I told Mayor, if it's gonna be like at 9 a.m. or whatever, then I would have to step back and just be alternate because I do have to. But if it's in the afternoon, I would like to be on it, but I understand. his-
I love the fact that we all want to serve on this committee.
I think it's a good problem to have, honestly. Did anyone else want to make comments before I do? I'm usually last in line.
Given Paul's background in housing and development, his life, the number of years that he's been involved.
Call me old man.
I'm not calling you old. Everybody else in the council. You know, I think he would be a good person on, very good person. One of the,
I'm open.
but
So I had proposed mayor, vice mayor, because that is what all of the other cities are bringing to it to match the structure. But I'm not married to, I would like to serve on it, but I don't feel ownership over it, so I'm open.
and I might make a motion.
I'm sorry, we do have a hand raised.
Yeah, we need to
Oh,
take
yeah.
public comment on it. Please hold it. Why don't we do that and then we'll bring it back up to the council, final consideration, and we'll move on.
Oh, we just lost our hand, so. I'm sorry.
Well, let's officially open it though, to make sure there's no one else who'd like to comment on it before we close public comment. Just in case they accidentally took themselves out of queue. All right, we'll close public comment. We'll bring it back up. Do you want to do it where Paul is one of the designees on it? And you can keep the one and I can be alternate and maybe we.
No, I think you should do it, and I
am.
yeah. Well,
It's a good problem that all three of
It
us
is,
want
it
to
is.
be there
And
and
I'm-
voice it, and I'm comfortable with any of
Yeah.
us being there on behalf
Yeah.
of this.
I agree with you 100% that this needs to be driven, that we need to, and with what city attorney has already accomplished and, your background, I think we could do some good work. I appreciate your argument about, what we're doing right now and keeping it somewhat even. So I don't have a problem stepping back. I mean, I really want to do it, but I don't have a problem stepping back and just being the alternate. And then, when you find out when they are meeting, that might,
Yeah, it would have been nice to know the duration, the frequency, the date,
find out, but
time.
But honestly, I don't think they know. I
Yeah.
don't think there's much of a structure.
Yeah, that might be it also. So I think I'm fine with that also. I think the only thing I wouldn't have been fine with is if we don't wanted to take Christine off, because I think she's going to be one of the most important.
No,
pieces
she
on it
needs to
after
be.
all the work she's done over the last
Yeah,
several
she
years.
needs to-
And she's the staff designee on it. And for those who don't know, she chairs our homelessness task force and does some really innovative, really cool things that the county is paying attention to, and I think will be invaluable. So I'm good with anything. So if somebody wants to make a motion to switch, are you sure, Holly? Because I would step out.
No, I think as the mayor, I think you should be on there.
So we'll do Paul, me, you'll be alternate.
That's fine. I don't have a problem with it. You're welcome. You're welcome.
But I need a motion for that.
So as a sidebar, are any of you aware that the county just approved $100 million HHS facility up in Auburn?
Saw that. If you want to be on it, somebody needs to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we make the change.
Is that a good enough motion?
I think we understand. So
We
we're
don't need to name it.
appointing Councilmember Joyner and Mayor
Yeah,
Silhai with the
Talia.
alternate as vice
Alright,
mayor.
I need a second.
The amended resolution.
Yes.
Amended resolution, yeah.
Move the
I moved.
We need a second.
second.
All right.
Thank
We need
you.
a roll call.
Yes. Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint, Councilmember Andriotta, Councilmember Joyner, and Mayor Silhai.
Yes. All right, we'll move on. I'm glad that you care so much.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move along to public hearings. So we are at item 9A. I know there was someone who was on the phone earlier, so just want to make sure that they are aware this is their item. Correct? That was the item they wanted?
Yeah.
All right, or hopefully you heard that. Sorry, so 9A, 12 Bridges Village 27, high density residential, and we will, 1, conduct a public hearing, and 2, determine that no further California Environmental Quality Act analysis is required. Skip the rest of that for the motion. 3, adopt resolution approving a large lot tentative parcel map to subdivide 12 Bridges Village 27 into 3 parcels. And 4, adopt resolution approving a tentative subdivision map to subdivide a portion of 12 Bridges Village 27 into 184 single family residence parcels. And Mr. Prosser, no. Well, Araceli, right?
Scarlett.
No. Huh?
Mayor Silhai, my presenter will be my assistant planner, Scarlett Marr.
Scarlett, I'm so sorry. I am.
No worries.
The Zoom environment has really made it difficult for me
Yeah.
to match faces and names.
We're used to little squares with the.
Also, I realized sidebar went back to work this month and I can no longer function as a human in real life. It's so weird to have things in a tactile environment. So apologies. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. The project before you tonight is the 12 Bridges Village 27 project. So before I begin my presentation, I wanted to provide you all with an overview of what to expect in tonight's presentation. I'll begin by providing a project background, followed by a project description, and then close with the requested entitlements before you tonight. At the conclusion of my presentation, as always, I'll be available to answer any of your questions. We do also have the applicant's representative here in the audience available to answer any project-specific questions as well. And with that, let's begin the presentation. So the project site is located within the 12 Bridges Specific Plan, which was adopted by the city in 1994. The area on the screen illustrated in red is the 12 Bridges Specific Plan area, A specifically. The 12 Bridges Master Plan community contains a mix of land uses which entail low, medium, and high density residential, as well as employment center, commercial, park, open space, and public. Since its approval and implementation, development has taken place throughout the area and continues to do so. In 1995, the city approved a general plan amendment and a specific plan amendment for the 12 Bridges area and certified a mitigated negative declaration. The amendments entailed amending the general plan land use element, and the image on the screen before you illustrates an overall view of the amended specific plan at the time in 1995. And in 2001, the city approved an ordinance providing for the reclassification of certain properties within the 12 Bridges specific plan area A. At the time, Village 27 was designated as employment center and is illustrated in red on the screen before you. Now, in 2004, the city approved 4 documents which entailed amending the general plan, amending the 12 Bridges specific plan, amending the circulation element, and amending the 12 Bridges general development plan. The exhibit on the left-hand side illustrates the original land uses for both Village 27 and Village 3B. At the time, Village 27 was zoned as employment center and Village 3B was zoned as high-density residential. As a result of the city's approval in 2004, Village 27 was rezoned from employment center to high-density residential, and Village 3B was rezoned from employment center, from high-density residential to employment center, which is on the right-hand side, the end result of that approval in 2004. So currently, the Village 27 project site is the last high-density residential parcel within the main village area of the 12 Bridges specific plan, Plan Area A. So the project site is located north of the existing Kaiser facility, west of Village 3, and east of Highway 65, as noted in red in the polygon. Pursuant to the City of Lincoln's general plan, the purpose of high-density residential designation is to allow for multifamily housing at densities greater than other residential designations in the city. The high-density residential is intended to allow for those structural forms that promote moderate and higher density living styles. The designation provides for condominiums, townhouses, triplexes, fourplexes, multifamily residential units, and similar and compatible uses. Those properties with the high density residential designation must range between 13 to 20 dwelling units per acre. So in order for the 12 Bridges Village 27 project, in order for the applicant to meet the minimum 13 dwelling units per acre, the table on the screen shows the overall unit count for Village 27. So the breakdown goes as follows. Village 27A and Village 27B parcel are proposed to be built at 184 dwelling units. Village 27C parcel is slated for 189 units, bringing the total count to 373 dwelling units for the entire Village 27 project area. I'd like to point out that the original 12 Bridges specific plan project, the same site to be developed, was proposed to be developed with 390 dwelling units, greater than what is being proposed before you tonight. So the two entitlements we have, the two entitlements being requested by the City Council tonight is the first, a large lot tentative parcel map. A large lot tentative parcel map is typical for any subdivision within the city for the purposes of phasing and financing. The tentative parcel map would allow the applicant to subdivide the approximately 20-acre site into 3 parcels, resulting in 27A, 27B, and 27C. The second entitlement and last entitlement before you tonight is a small lot tentative subdivision map. A small lot tentative subdivision map will allow the applicant to create 184 single-family detached residential lots on units 27A and 27B only. So the applicant, like I mentioned, proposes to subdivide 27A and 27B to 184 single-family residential lots. All the lots within the subdivision would provide for adequate driveway parking, private rear yard area, appropriate setbacks, sidewalks throughout the entire subdivision, and proper throughout the subdivision for proper pedestrian connectivity. Further, the subdivision was designed to take advantage of the future park site north of Village 27A. Instead of privatizing the park amenity, Homes will now face a future park side to allow for eyes to be on the park 24/7. So lastly, Village 27C, as noted in the darker polygon on the screen, is not part of the small lot tentative subdivision map requested before you tonight, and is not subject to consideration tonight. At this time, the city has not received an application for Village 27, but when the city does receive an application, the project will be required to acquire all the necessary entitlements and go through all the appropriate decision-making bodies. So in conclusion, staff respectfully recommends that the city council conduct a public hearing, consider the testimony of the public, and take the following actions as noted on the screen before you. And that concludes my presentation. And like I mentioned, I'm here to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, we're not in a virtual setting anymore. I'm so used to saying that I almost said it. Like I said, real life, it's hard for me today. But we will
I have
go,
to go first every time anymore.
but she probably still will, because like I'm so used to it.
Yeah.
But I do think let's go, well, I guess we don't have to go through, but do we have any questions first before, is that how we would handle it, right? We have questions first and then we'll go out for public testimony.
I do have one question. The park timeline, I've heard two different timelines. I've heard the park won't be built for 6 years, and then I heard the park won't be built for 10 years. What's the estimation on that?
I can answer the first part of the question. So I wrote this down. It's slated, the park design is slated to be done in this fiscal year. But as far as construction, I have no date, and I can defer that question to the director if he has anything to add.
Yeah, the date of start of construction, of course, will be based on the CIP project that's this fiscal year for the design of that regional park. It should be completed by the end of this fiscal year. And then the start of construction would be determined by budgeting and another CIP project. And of course, whether we have adequate funding to begin construction. My understanding is that we more than likely be constructing this in phases. So whether it, it could be, it's right now, it would be such a wild guess of when started construction, but it would be something that would be reviewed and approved per the budget with city council.
Okay, maybe I missed this. Is the city building the park or the developer building the park?
The city will be building the park. The 12 Bridges Development Agreement required that the developers in that area provide the land to the city, but did not, but excluded them or exempted the builders from actually being required to build the parks.
Why is that?
I can't answer that back in.
So it's a legacy project. This was originally approved in the 90s.
Yeah,
This
I
was
realize that.
before councils made the decision that developers will build all parks
Gotcha.
moving forward. So this was dead for a decade after the recession, and this is just a legacy project.
Yeah, and
Originally.
Councilmember Andrietta, I don't want to put a point a finger at the 12 Bridges development. Most of our development agreements prior to about 2016 had that same provision in it, which is why you have seen in our community parks that have laid fallow and undeveloped, even partially developed, because we're playing catch up with the funding to be able to continue building the phases. That is something that as a council that was changed to encourage parks to be activated at time of construction.
And just to piggyback on that so that everyone is clear what you're saying is that it's not up for consideration whether the city can change it. It is part of the development agreement. It has been part of the development agreement for 30 years, right? So from the 90s, right?
Right now, we're at 23 years.
So quite a long time, and we can all have our opinions on if we like the way that that is structured or not, but that's not under our purview.
That's correct. And I would defer to the city attorney for.
Correct,
legal.
just so I get my vote where I'm able to have my inputs and outputs, right?
That's correct. It's a binding agreement that runs with the land.
Okay, just wanted to be clear on that. Anyone else have questions?
I have one question. Village 27A and B, and that's single family homes, correct?
That is correct.
They're single family homes, so it's not exactly, okay. And what would you think would be the average price? It would be market value, market price. What we, can you offer us a guess?
So because the community development department and land use planning and compliance with general plan and zoning, we try not to get involved in the market and private analysis of the properties. They are proposed at market rate. I would defer to the applicant's representative. But what I would be, if I had to say anything, it would be consistent with the market prices of what you saw at Village 2 at the beginning of sales, not today, with the price increases that we're seeing out there, but what you saw at the entry sale prices, but we'll could defer to that.
Okay, do we have the applicant that?
They
can
are
answer this
present.
Question
Yes,
for him? Can we do that?
at public comment.
Is that when, like, how does that work for public hearings? Can they answer him now, or do we do that where they answer when we go to the public comment testimony part of the public?
It would probably be most appropriate to do it as part of the public hearing.
Okay, so they'll
They can give
answer it. They
testimony
can-
on that subject.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? And then we can open officially the public hearing. Great. I'm looking at you, Christine. I'm doing this right.
Yes, you are.
Sure. All right. So with that, we will open the public hearing and invite those to make comments. Again, reminding though that public hearings are different than normal council business and that it is providing testimony, not asking questions, but providing testimony to the item. Correct? All right. Ms. Gillen, do we have any who would wish to?
Yes, we do. We have a number of hands raised. I don't know if council wanted to start with the applicant's representative first.
Why don't we start with the representative, the applicant's representative? That would be great. Thank you.
Doesn't look like Bill.
It's great to be before you with this project. I was looking back in my time frame, and we began this with the Scarlett and the other staff members as part of your city back in August of 2018. So it's really good to be here, finally be in front of you. We have been working closely with the Scarlett and the rest of the staff. Thank you for the presentation, Scarlett. I know this is a complicated project sometimes to put forth. We have been through the conditions. We're in a complete agreement with staff, and we're ready to move forward. If there's any other questions with regard to pricing, that's probably going to be dealt with Mr. Bob Holmes from the applicant. Ken Topper, I'm sorry, I did not announce that. Ken Topper, planning manager at Morton Patalon, handling the entitlements for this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we then hear from the Del Webb? Ms. Gillen, can we call them up next?
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the person's name.
The other,
Bob Holmes.
No, Bob. Bob Holmes, is he in attendance here tonight? Okay, yeah. If he could please come up.
would it be possible to hear from him next to be able to answer Councilmember Lawrence's question?
Bob Holmes with the 12 Bridges Project.
He just-
Bob Holmes with the 12 Bridges Project, representing the 12 Bridges Project. Unfortunately, I brought the price list from today. I don't have the price list from a couple of years ago. Price list today, the lowest price is $620,000. $620,000. I'm sorry, I have a sore throat, folks. Give it a try.
So are you saying that the starting price for this, one of these homes is 620,000? No.
Today, I got the price list right here. Right here. Okay, I can tell you that probably they started somewhere $80,000 to $90,000 less than that when they start.
So you are not speaking of what you perceive potential market rate price for the lots and homes we're talking about.
Well,
You're talking about it.
I'm talking about houses that are in Village 2, right next to where this is today, that are for sale.
Slightly larger lots.
I believe they are exactly as wide, but a little bit longer. Correct.
So are you saying that it would be a roughly comparable price for what these homes will go on them as?
I can't conjecture about that, honestly, because you're going to get the market rate housing in front of you. It will depend on what you're asking them to do from the standpoint of architecture and how the houses are built. And then they will, it's a market rate thing. They're going to have to decide what it is that they want to sell them for. Okay. I can't conjecture because I'm not the person building the house.
So the best comparison we have is a somewhat similar product next door with a slightly larger, but not much larger lot in a similar type of product
That
offering.
that is correct.
So I think what he's saying is because it has not gone through the design review process, we don't know what.
We don't
these
know the
elevations
specifications
are
of
gonna
what
look
they're
Exactly.
willing to like cut out, modify, standardize to bring costs.
Exactly. And they will be before you,
Understood.
and you will go through that design process with them. And you'll be able to ask them specifically what the price is going to be.
So depending on the modifications and the decisions they make for that, it could be 100,000 less. I'm making broad statements here, right? But
So
where
even 100,000 less, you're $500,000.
it's quite a lot, yeah.
Yes.
The possibility of it being much, much less is very slim because they could
No.
not possibly cut out that many things.
Materials costs are.
So material costs have gone through the
All the
roof.
inflation of
Correct,
manufacturing and all of the product.
correct. So I wish I
That's
could
helpful.
tell you more, but
That was a
I'm not gonna build them, so.
To help me work through.
Okay,
And hopefully that helps the public understand that it's not fully final. It is, there are still decisions yet to be made that could bring it up or down within a range.
that's correct.
It's gonna
That's
be
correct.
A limited range.
Limited.
Yes, a limited range, but still a range.
That's correct.
It's a market rate home, and for that kind of home,
Yes.
the range is
With the ecstasy.
600K.
Sure, and there will be extras, options
Yeah.
people can add on.
So
to
it
these
could go
homes.
up or
And
slightly
it's
down.
time dependent.
Yeah.
There'll be more if it takes longer to get
If there's
through.
more disruptions in the
approvals.
chain process for
Right.
Correct.
construction and.
So maybe you can help with something else. One of the concerns, are we okay with this, Christine? It's kind of,
I think this speaker has expired his 3 minutes, so
So we can't ask the further questions. We can debate among ourselves what he's already given testimony on. Okay, we'll do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We would save that for after we take the remainder
the
of
balance of
and so
public testimony.
that, and we'll come back to it. Do we have,
Yes, Mayor, we do. We have a number of people on Zoom. Mr. Mike Herrick, please go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me? I'm assuming so.
Yes.
Okay. Regarding the 12 Bridges Village, 27 high-density housing in 27C and the smaller lots in 27A and B, I do oppose it. I want to point out that the general plan for the Village 27 has now been amended 5 times, and actually you all stated something to like that earlier this evening. I don't think we have a plan when we need to amend something that many times. At least it's not an intelligent plan, but rather something that's ad hoc. I remember at one point we were going to have a public school there, but that's no longer in the happening because that was canceled as well. My concern is that we've been very inconsistent. When I bought this house 18 years ago, I was sold a panacea that never turned out to be. My concern with high density housing is quality of life for the homeowner themselves and also for the community. Crime also does go up. That's a reality. I can take you around any area in town or in other communities where high density housing is. Crime is a problem in those areas. Tax revenue, it will be lower as property values will decline as a result. This is really being done for the developers, and we need to consider the residents. Let's put the community first and the developers second. We have the opportunity to get Lincoln right, and we're headed in the wrong direction in many ways, and I'm very concerned about that. The first opening comment from the public was right. There's an opportunity with the high school. I'm glad we're getting a high school, but that intersection was prime, and we threw that away. That's all I've got. Thank you for the consideration.
Thank you. Next, we have Dan Catania. Please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's my comment is more of a question, which is a big question. Since 1995, this was designed back in 1995. Lots changed since then. My question is, how much of this planning did you consult with the sheriff's department and the police department?
Thank you. Is that your final comment? Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Garabedian. Please go ahead.
Mike Carabedian. Well, first of all, during the question period, I didn't hear the question period open for public questions. Only the council members got to ask questions. Are you going to reopen the period when the
Oh,
public?
so this is public hearing for your testimony. We're taking public testimony now.
There's nothing in the law that prevents you from answering questions or people asking questions. You have the chair had authority a little while ago to extend somebody for a few minutes if the chair wished. There's nothing in the law that prevents people from asking questions or even prevents answering them. If the council is wrong, the council can point to where the law prohibits questions. I had a couple questions that leading into my comments, and I can't ask my questions. And the last person didn't get answers to their question. What kind of a hearing is this? A public hearing where people can, what is the authority? Please, that's, oops, I'm asking a question. In my opinion, the city council is totally incorrect about the law. The law doesn't tell you to do it, but it is not governance if you only do what the law says you are supposed to do. That is not you exercising your responsibility to make decisions in the public health, safety, welfare, well-being, and the health of the community. We may need a new city attorney who doesn't shut up the public. That's really a problem. So I hope I haven't used, I guess, have about a minute left to not ask questions, but my key concern is about trees. I wanted to know what the plan, when the houses go on the market, if they will have trees on them. The temperature of the earth is increasing dramatically, and communities without tree cover are 10 degrees hotter. Cities are 10 degrees hotter that don't have a significant tree cover. So this is a major issue in terms of quality of life. And if there aren't, if tree cover is not allowed for or required at the beginning, that's a problem. Or if trees have been removed from the site and that kind of thing. The other key issue has to do with the park question. Some people have covered that. And this may not apply at this point, but there's no reason that if the plans being changed willy-nilly, right and left, couldn't be changed to address park and other issues. Thanks for a little bit, but not enough.
Thank you. Next, we have Fred Barnhart. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm a resident of Sun City, Lincoln Hills, and this year both of my adult children went through the process of trying to buy houses and were caught in what we all know of the bidding wars and so on. I think that it's really important for all communities and our community to offer some alternatives for housing that people can actually afford, especially young people with families starting out. I think that $500,000 is not all that affordable, but it's certainly better than some of the alternatives. So I am strongly in favor of the high density housing. Also, I know that we as a city are required to provide a certain amount of high density housing. And if we don't do it, there's a possibility that the state might step in and mandate that for us. And I think it's really much better that we do that ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we do have one more. June Paquette, please go ahead. June, please unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. I had heard a number of rumors, if you will, and I watched a video presentation about Village 27, and it made me quite concerned because the information referenced the fact that there were not sidewalks on all the streets, that there were only a one-car garage, that it was going to be increased crime and deteriorating house values. So that was a concern, and I wrote to the city council and I received clarification from each of our council members as well as the Planning Commission. And their information allayed my fears. I did want to reference a report that I found very helpful. It was written by the California Planning Roundtable through the California Department of Housing and Community Development. It's entitled "The Myths and Facts About Affordable and High-Density Housing." It references various developments throughout the state: San Jose, Los Gatos, San Diego, Midtown Sacramento, as an example. It dispels those rumors about increased crime. It references benefits to high-density housing. And I think that one of the myths is that it will bring in other people, whoever they might be, when in reality, who can afford these homes are perhaps our teachers, our first responders, those people that are already living and working here and struggling with rent and would like to own a home. And certainly if you look at market value of any house in California, if it's $400,000 to $500,000, that is not, those are our grandkids. Those are people that work here every day. And to have housing such as that is a draw for Lincoln. So I'm in support of Village 27. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lori Wallace. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much for taking our comments. I would just like to say that this is an additional 200 units put on to another 700 units that are in the same basically block of land surrounding a brand new charter school and a retirement community with not a lot to do. And if the park's not going to be there for 6 or 10 years, I would say that's a concern. These new homes may be nice for a few years, but they also may turn bad in the next few years. I'm from Stockton. 30 years ago, the city council started with high density housing on every other corner. And if you don't know, Stockton is well known for its crime and the fact that there are no nice neighborhoods left. So in your planning, I would suggest that you put a lot of these things together and not sprinkled all over Lincoln so that you don't hurt all of the neighborhoods of Lincoln. I had also heard someone say that the city council had decided that they didn't want public comment anymore. And I just was hoping that wasn't true. But if it is, whoever said that should be recalled, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised in Zoom. So the first speaker that we have up here, obviously we can see that downstairs has closed. We didn't have any folks in overflow. So Carol Wilson.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say I oppose 27. I'm very concerned that we have so much high density all clustered in one area and around some very nice houses and around Del Webb. And this town used to have a small town atmosphere, and that's what people moved here for. I had young families tell me that that's why they moved here, for their children, for this small town community. And it looks like the city planners are changing everything, so we aren't going to have a small town feel anymore here. And that's what we all moved here for. So we're altering our suburbs, and it's very sad to me to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lena Lebowski.
got the podium to hang on to. Good evening, Mayor and council members. There are 907 high-density homes planned for the Bella Breeze Loop. Where are the kids going to go when they're waiting for their parents to get off work? The park won't get built for years and years. Kids want to do things. What are they going to do? Yeah, they're going to get in trouble is what they'll do. The drug dealers will find something for them to do. You're going to need every one of those 3 policemen you decided to hire just for this one area. Paul Joyner and Steve Prosser spoke at a meeting on Friday about Village 27, which was very kind of them. Paul Joyner told us that millennials don't want yards. They don't want upkeep of a yard. They just want a house. I kind of giggled to myself because that's the exact sales pitch a salesman in Rockland gave me a couple of years ago when I was looking at model homes. I think everyone during COVID has learned that it's good to have outdoors around your house. Here's what I want you to do, Council. You've already approved Villages 3 and 4 for a total of 534 high-density homes. Turn Village 27 into a medium-density zone, please. And don't tell me you can't do this because it was planned 20 years ago. You just changed the general plan in April for Joyner Ranch East. It was zoned commercial, and you changed the general plan to medium density. You can do the same thing for Village 27. And if you really do care about residents of Lincoln, you would overturn your decision on either Villages 3 or 4. Use some common sense. Direct staff to make each developer include a small high-density component in every single development. You will have plenty of high density if you do that. In our meeting, Paul Joyner said, but we're mandated. California is mandating. However, it wasn't so important when Joyner Ranch East and Esplanade at Turkey Creek got approved this last spring. Come on, Council, we can do better than that. Vote no tonight and turn Village 27 into medium density. Do not clump 907 high-density homes in one area. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Robin Anderson.
Good evening. I'm a retired teacher and have returned to Placer County where my family has lived and owned property since 1965. I wanted to live in a smaller town, not a high density kind of town, which I'm surprised to recently learn is planned on the edge of Sun City, Lincoln Hills, where I now live. As a teacher and a mother, I can confirm what she was saying. We need space. Children need places to play for good health and physically and mentally. We need more space than high density. I didn't want to live in a place like a city with high-rise apartments. I think that children and families, even individual adults, want more space around them. And I strongly encourage you to change that to medium density, certainly. I was alarmed to learn that the formerly planned park has been reduced, and that definitely needs to be kept large and to be developed probably along with the housing. Even if the developer isn't doing it, we need to do that. there's going to be enormous congestions in the street when you add that many houses in. Most households have more than one car, but even with one more car per household, having more than 900 cars coming and going to their jobs and dropping kids off for school, it's really a madhouse. I lived in Rockland for a while, and during drop-off school time for the children, the streets backed up where you couldn't even get off of Taylor Pacific to get on Midas, where the schools were located. I would just really be sad to see that happen with Lincoln. And I feel that condensing them all in one area is especially a bad idea. Davis has multifamily units here and there through communities of single family housing. It worked just fine. Stockton has other problems. I don't see that scattering higher density throughout housing would necessarily lead to that kind of situation. So I would strongly oppose high density. I've also noticed that it started with one section and it's grown to several different sections of high density. I don't know what my time allowance is. I'm done. Well, thank you. And I appreciate being able to come in person, not a Zoom meeting.
Thank you. Next, we have Sue Dumas.
I've been in the Lincoln Hills community for almost 6 years. It'll be 6 years in August. Moved here because I like the idea of living in the suburbs. I moved from the Bay Area. I was in real estate. I've been in real estate for 50 years. One of the things that I would like to point out to people that I'm sure most people are not aware of is there are 43,560 square feet in an acre. You're talking about putting from 13 to 20 homes per acre in your development. That square footage goes from 2,178 square feet to 3,350 square feet. But let me remind you of this. That includes streets, any sidewalk, any easement, anything like that. So that's a pretty small area. What we're talking, when we're talking 2,100 and 7,800 square feet, is about 2/3 the size of this room that we are in. And you have to subtract out of that any streets or sidewalks that you put in. Has anyone thought of that? And the other thing that I would like to say is I feel that there is a question I would like to ask of the director of the community development, Mr. Prosser, and also Councilman Joyner, who spoke to us last week. And thank you for coming and giving us the information. But I think these are things that you have not really looked at thoroughly, and the impact that it's going to have on the environment, on our day-to-day life. If we go to the store, if we just try to get to the freeway, it is going to make an impact on everyone, each and every person who lives in this community. And like I said, we all moved to the suburbs, not to urban America. We don't want to live in the city. If I'd wanted to live in the city, I'd have moved to San Francisco. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next, we have Margaret Dobbs.
Thank you. I had sent an email and I understand that the city council received the information that I had sent. I think it's important that we keep houses affordable for working families, like was mentioned, teachers and police officers and fire personnel. And for the most part, I understand that houses keep going up in price. I'm concerned about investors buying property and either renting it out or selling it later to make a profit. So I think it's important that we think not just about ourselves, but about the whole community and supporting the people that are in the service areas of our city, that they can have a place to live. It may be ideal to have a nice large lot, but it may not be reality in today's economy. So I appreciate the efforts that are being put into this development and expect that it will be able to have affordable family housing in the area. And that's my primary concern is to think about how people can have housing in a beautiful place where we live in Lincoln. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jerome Herfindan, sorry.
That's a long last name, and it's okay. I've been called a lot of things. First off, I want to thank all of you for being here this evening and listening to us. We do have concerns. I moved from an all-American city by the name of Stockton, California. You've probably heard a couple of comments about what's happened to Stockton since it became an all-American city. I was very excited about moving to Lincoln, California. It was an all-American city as well. So we sold our home in Stockton and moved here. And the only thing that I can think of is when I drive around this community, what an incredible community you guys have helped develop. And you should be incredibly proud of it. Look at what's going on out here on 193. There isn't one person sitting here that wouldn't love to live out there. I know you would, because it's a beautiful community and it's going to be even better. My point is that what I am going to ask you is that would you want to live in this community that you're talking about developing now? Or would you want one of your family members to live there? If the answer is yes, great, vote for it. If the answer is no, you need to think about what you're doing. This is a great community. And you have an incredible opportunity to keep it going. And I'm just going to ask you to try to keep it going the way you've been doing in the past. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kirk Euler.
Good evening, council members. Kirk Euler here on behalf of the Placer Business Alliance. The businesses that support our organization make up the industries that represent 93% of Placer's gross domestic product. We represent agriculture and forestry, construction, finance and insurance, healthcare and social assistance, manufacturing, real estate and rental leasing, retail, and tourism. You can imagine with the diversity of businesses, everything from tourism and retail to finance and insurance, manufacturing and healthcare, that they all have their priorities when it comes to local government and governance. They all have their concerns when it comes to service delivery. The one thing that I hear consistently from every major employer in Placer County is we don't have enough housing for our employees in our own county. Consistently, across the economic spectrum. I'm asking this council to make a commitment that it has made in the past and that I hope it will keep. That you understand that we need places for the people who fulfill our medical needs, who stock our shelves, who provide our recreational opportunities. We need places for them to live in the community they serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, that is all the cards that I have.
All right, and there's no further that are, all right. Well, then we will officially close the public hearing.
Mayor?
Or do we? It's one each, but Ms. Scanlon, what is the, can we?
So Albert Schreiber, I didn't get a card from you. It was. Okay. Well, I apologize. I didn't see you back there.
So just, how do I proceed?
You can technically reopen and allow for public,
Okay, so then I will reopen.
those who haven't already given
For
testimony.
those who have not already given testimony, but Ms. Scanlon, would you like him to fill out a card for your record?
No, that's fine.
Are you sure?
Yes,
And then in the future, can we do that just to make it so that it's administratively accurate? Now that we're in person, to come by. Once you've spoken, you can't come back up in a public hearing. I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's my understanding that the cards are optional, but we won't go down that path tonight. Anyway, what I wanted to point out when this item started was the total disgust with not being able to have the park in first, and oh my gosh, you know, the council in years past just totally blew it and made this stupid agreement, and you guys got to live with it. And oh my gosh, that's all I hear about is the past councils, you know, all their mistakes. Okay, you guys just accepted the Joyner project, a park with no money to build the park and no money to maintain the open space. What is the difference between what the other councils have done in 20 years ago and what you're doing today? Nothing. There's nothing different. You just keep repeating history. Why do you think some of us get up here and try to point this stuff out? So you divert, you improve. No, not this council. Just keep going down the same road. So you got a park now that Mr. Prosser pushed, and it was the idea of staff, according to the council meeting. So instead of this council saying, no, that's a bad idea, no, accept it. And now you got the same thing. And you can't afford the parks you got now. So just keep going down the same road, kick the can down the road, and you're going to end up, you know, in the same place 20 years from now. The council is going to be complaining about what this council did. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any others who didn't fill out a card who haven't spoken who would like to speak?
On bet.
All right.
We have a hand raised on Zoom.
Please speak into the microphone.
Jesus, my glasses, there it was. Yeah, I don't live in Sun City, but I happen to agree with these people that are here of what's going on. I have a question. Why wasn't there a time limit put on years and years ago that this project to be done was done within a certain time, not 300 years later, come back and say, oh, look what we can do. Just curiosity, why wasn't there a time limit put on it? You have this, you do it within this period of time, or we're going on to something else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, may we have your name for the public record?
Thank you. Mr. Fett.
Hi, John Fett, private citizen. So I don't give the numbers particularly, and I'm just offering you some observations. So if 2/3 of this property is going to be 184 single family units, not what I consider high density multifamily, that leaves 206 units left for the 1/3 of the property. I would ask that you guys address that and let's not put 60 units per acre of 3-story apartments on the remainder piece, and that something be done about that. Maybe it's already done, I don't know. Secondly, I too don't like parks that are going to be built later. Paul and I know that firsthand, you know. So again, I have a lot of ways to provide economic viability to the city with some funding. 5 years ago, I sent an email. Cal Atlantic wanted to buy $2 million worth of property in my neighborhood the city owns. Crickets. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Nothing done. Nothing still done. The offer stands. If you want $2 million to build a park for these people, let's get rid of that dirt. Thank you.
Thank you.
We move to the comment online, Ms.
Yes, so James Meyer, please go ahead. James, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my name is James Meyer. I live here in Sun City, Lincoln Hills. And my wife and I moved here 8 years ago from Elk Grove because we wanted to be in a family-oriented setting and a low crime area, which unfortunately Elk Grove was fast becoming because of the rapid population boom that was taking place down there. Property values took a nosedive, and a lot of houses turned into foreclosures and rentals. This pretty much goes back to the to 2008 when we had the financial downturn. And my wife and I really enjoyed living here in Lincoln, and we just are also opposed to Village 27 high density because we just feel that this would bring in more crime and it would lower our property values. And I just hope that we can turn this building project that you have into something that would be much more productive than just simply high density housing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Is that it? Ms. Gallagher?
Yes, that is it.
All right, so I will reclose the public hearing and bring it back up to the bench. I think for the purposes of the public hearing, maybe we will go through one by one and see if there's anything that each person wants to say. We can open up the discussion amongst ourselves after that. Does that work for everyone? Like we've been doing on Zoom, it seems like it's worked really well in terms of making sure everyone gets their say. Does that work? We'll start with all. Sorry, we'll do the same order we've been doing on Zoom, just because it has worked really well in terms of organization. That way with this, everyone gets their say and then we can have discussion. Does that work? All right, I'll start with Councilor Ryder. Do you have any comments to make?
Yeah, I don't have any more questions. Listening to all the comments about, I realize that we need housing, right? I mean, that's an issue. But I am a teacher and, we do okay, but the idea that the way the housing prices are now, like I was on the verge of, we've been looking for a long time to buy another house. And then all of a sudden everything skyrocketed, right? And so I'm in a holding pattern. I was gonna buy out at 193. What was, 580, 600 is now $800,000. I can't do that. This idea of these houses all crammed together for $620,000, working people can't afford that. And I'm just making a comment. I'm like, I understand the need for housing, but it's a contradiction. Oh, we need housing, we need affordable housing for working families. I'm telling you right now, working families can't afford that right now. And it's an issue. It's an issue.
You looking just for comments or you look or
Questions or comments? That way you have
Yeah.
uninterrupted time and then we'll.
okay, good. So a few questions, Steve. The original planned density for this area was 390 units, is that right?
Yes.
And we have reduced that now in this project to what?
If it's 306, 360, I'm sorry.
360?
Scarlett said 373.
I think 373 for the chart that was up earlier.
So let's go with that. A reduction in the number of units at any rate. And the density for this is.
You get the right number.
It was 363.
Does the slide have the right number? It's 373, not 360.
I I wrote it down.
That's on the full 27.
The full three.
The 189 is
29 for the two under consideration tonight.
184 for the one under consideration tonight, 189 for 27C
Okay,
to be developed in the future.
okay.
All right, so that's helpful. So 184 for what we're talking about tonight. And the zoning allows for 20 to the acre. We are what, 13.1?
As in an aggregate for 21 A, B, and C, it's 13.01 units the acre.
And max number on medium density is 12.
12.9.
So this is one more unit per acre than a medium density zoning. Potential was for 20 units per acre, and which could be a multi-story apartment complex. And so I think the reason I'm bringing this up is that council has been very aware of the desire not to see what people perceive as high density housing. And in point of fact, to do small lot, single family homes that are residential in nature, rather than these big blocks of apartment complexes along this area. So I understand the concern. I absolutely do. I also understand the need for this type of housing. I would have, at a given age, been very grateful for this type of housing to be able to get a start in the marketplace. And there have been projects similar to this built through the years in our community that I think a lot of folks may not know about. I would point out too that most of these units will be larger than some of the smaller units in Lincoln Hills. I think most people know that. And there is a high density project within Lincoln Hills as well, a condo project that I think was very much needed there for certain folks. So please know that these things take years to work through all the different studies. And so when someone says, I don't think you've thought about this, it's been years and the developer has paid in and paid in and paid in for all of those studies through the years, traffic studies, water studies, all the rest. And those are in the public documents. You're able to access those. And so Steve, with respect to traffic studies, we talked about this the other day. The entirety of the 12 Bridges project had a traffic study done that analyzed all of those impacts. And in point of fact, through the years, the densities have been dropped from those originally studied and projected, correct?
Yeah, the assumed population and equivalent densities has not materialized in the 12 Bridges area. So in layman's terms, not as many houses as we thought were going to be built in 1994 are actually built.
So ultimately, the impacts of traffic and of those densities is reduced in the original studies.
And analyze that build out, and the master plan for the infrastructure was based on what we assumed was build out population and density.
So in our conversation with folks, the Republican Club of Lincoln Hills, there was a question asked, what if these houses can't sell? And Mr. Holmes, maybe I can pull you up real quick. Typically, and I just want to verify that this is the case with you, nobody's building on spec anymore. People are only building when there's a contract for that home.
Yeah, given the current environment in home building, quite a number of builders are only building when not only do they have a contract, but they can also get the supplies to build the house. So right now it takes 14 weeks to get windows for a house. So you're gonna, that becomes a critical path. And so you don't pull a building permit until you know that you've got windows coming. And there are critical shortages in the construction industry right now. There are.
All right, thank you. I believe, so schools was also asked. Within the 12 Bridges community, there is a brand new multi-million-dollar high school. There is 12 Bridges Middle School, 12 Bridges Elementary School, and the brand new John Adams Academy. It may even be that that area is overschooled in reality, but the school district itself, we have no control over that. Within this project, land was set aside for a school. there was no plan for John Adams Academy at the time. So in many respects, that John Adams Academy has taken the place of a school, and John Adams is K through 12, I believe, as opposed to perhaps another elementary school, that type of thing. So much broader coverage there. Just looking through my notes and trying to remember back to all the concerns that were expressed there. I wish we had one of our officers in the room. Chief's not here, is he? So, and one of the speakers did mention this. High density, for the most part, does not equal higher crime. What happens is you have the same per capita level of crime, but you have people condensed in a smaller area, and that can appear, because you might have more calls for service in that small area, to be higher crime rates in that area, but per capita it is not. And I've never seen a study that suggests otherwise, except for in areas none of us want to live in, Compton, that type of thing. So the question is, it was asked of us, can you guarantee us this won't become a slum? These are, in my mind, these are $500,000 homes. People are going to be investing everything they got in this first home in most cases. Another question was asked, where are these people going to work? There is a UC Davis campus being built on the border between Rockland and Lincoln that at build out will employ 3,000 people. That will be over time. There's no question of that. There was just a land gift for a Sac State satellite campus directly to the south in a project called Placer Ranch. That campus too will employ a great many people. There is a need for housing to bring those folks in and to provide personnel for these new facilities. There's no question of that. So I think that covers a lot of the questions we were asked that we didn't get to the other day. And I guess the last thing is I just want to be very specific about what action we're being asked to take tonight. And that is simply to take this larger block of land, divide it into 3 parcels, and then divide those down into individual lots.
2 of the 3, yes.
2 of the 3. So at this stage, when we are done tonight, if this is approved, it's creating paper lots, nothing more than that. Is that correct?
That is correct. They're entitled lots. They would need to then bring forward a final map to physically record and legalize those lots. But in order to do that, they would need to comply with the conditions. And in either conjunction with it or subsequent to that, would go through design review on the homes for the architecture and site layouts, where we would condition just for one of the comments that was made during the public, that is when we would condition the planting of additional trees per lots in the subdivision, which is consistent with our development standards of a minimum of 2 trees per lot, 3 on a corner. 1 is considered a public tree, and 1 to 2 are considered private trees.
And after design review, that would come back to the planning commission, yes?
That is correct.
So another public hearing, 2 public hearings to get to that stage. All right, thank you, Madam.
All right, Councilman Crosby.
I live in Lincoln Hills. Obviously, I represent Lincoln Hills, part of it. When we moved here, prior to moving here in 2002, we came from the Bay Area, wanted a small town. I knew, because of having read the general plan while we were trying to make a decision whether we were here or not, that Lincoln was going to be at 120,000 people. I knew that there was high density at the end of the 12 Bridges property. It was in the plan then. It's moved, done some lot switches, but basically there is less high density in the plan than there was when I bought. 120,000 people in a town that has 40% of its land set aside for open public spaces is a small town. You know, that's not a population number, it's a feel for the town. My son and daughter, my daughter and son-in-law live in a community called Equinox in Lincoln Crossing, cross Lincoln Boulevard. It's a community about, I can't remember the number of homes, I would guess 100. They're the same kind of thing. They're large houses, small lots, small jobs, family first home starting out. They could barely afford it, and the house is double in price. In answer, you know, your discussion, yeah, 600K is a lot, you know, but $1.2 million in a few years, you know, the California thinking. People, Lincoln Hills has high density. They have two sections of high density. They have condominiums and they have 2-story, small lot, large homes. I don't know if anybody realizes that. So I kind of think that they don't cause slums or crime rate raising. I haven't heard of that in Lincoln Hills. Somebody mentioned Village One and the Turkey Creek and the Esplanade, and those are all large lot, medium lot developments. There is also scheduled to go into Village One at the corner of Oak Tree Lane and 193, high density residential. Our general plan that the whole community built, those meetings were long, arduous, and open as open can be over a long period of time. The plan was blessed in 2008. The decision of the community at that time was to spread high density out into all the villages so you didn't build a concentration. Keep a small town. We have a good plan. When we make this decision, the decision is based totally on policies and regulations. Is the project consistent with our general plan, with our municipal code, with our zoning code? We have a public hearing where the citizens have a right to comment, and we're supposed to evaluate their comments based on policies and regulations, not on extraneous feelings. There are required findings that are in the documents based on the project type. And the decision is based on policy, regulations, staff recommendation, and merited public comment. We won't base, or I won't base the decision, and my colleagues shouldn't either, on personal opinion or my beliefs that are not consistent with the local regulations. Our local regulations are the planning document, our general plan, municipal code, and zoning. Comments that are immaterial to the facts at hand, the facts at hand being these evaluation criteria. I'm not going to do it on my gut feeling, although I have big gut feelings. I'm not going to do it for financial gain or loss, obviously. And I'm not going to do it because I have any relationship with any involved party. That's how I'm going to make my decision. But there's already this type of development in the city that is not causing problems. It's been in the plan for 17 years. And the changes to the specific plans are generally moving around, but not changing the overall density of the allocated land that developed. You know, and that's market driven. You know, these things are 600,000 for two reasons. They're not 600. They're at the price they are for two reasons. One is the cost of materials, and two, the marketplace. If the cost of materials is beyond what the market is willing to pay, they aren't going to sell anything. They aren't going to build anything. So I kind of got on my planning commission high horse. I'm sorry, but I'm done.
Thank you. Councilor Lawrenson.
Yeah, I also represent Sun City. I represent the rest of the Sun City that Councilman Carlson does not represent. But I moved here 4 years ago because, you know, I wanted to live in a 55+ community. I bought a house that's probably too big for me. You know, it's very nice. Sun City is very nice, but you know, but there's certain boundaries around Sun City. Like inside Sun City is 55+. Everybody's pretty much, you know, there for a reason. Now, I don't think I have any business telling people outside of Sun City, you know, how they're going to live. You know, what's right now we have a problem in the state of California with housing, and the only way we're going to get out of it is to build. And these high density housings, my God, they're 2-story houses on single lots. They're not high rises. It's not, you know, some high rise somewhere in Chicago or New York or whatever. And I looked at the 2008 general plan, and this was always supposed to be high density. And there's a park plan for there. I remember discussions about, you know, were the roads wide enough for the fire engines? You know, there's open land on 2 sides, a park to the north. This is not, you know, that's why I asked, you know, how much of these houses were going to go for. And I said, when they said 500,000 to 600,000, you know, this is not low income housing, you know, and, you know, basically that's it. I mean, that's how I feel.
Thank you. All right, so I guess it's my turn. So I have a few comments. I understand the nature of the concerns. I think it's built around a lot of misunderstanding. We use terms like high density residential, and everyone brings their own associations, I think, with what that is. Somewhat coincidentally, I guess, I've lived in almost every other city that was compared to tonight. I was raised in Stockton. I was raised in a nice neighborhood in Stockton. So there are nice places. What there isn't is there isn't anywhere that doesn't have crime. Lincoln doesn't have that problem, and we won't have the same problems that Stockton has, because we have, maybe in like 50 years, it would take a very long time to get there. They have a lot of endemic and systemic issues that are not built around having some condos, which these aren't even condos. These are single residential units. So this isn't Stockton, and it has an apples to, I don't even, something that's not fruit. I lived in Davis for a decade. You know, they have their own issues, and they do have very high residential, and even places that might not be zoned for it. I know that we had 8 girls in an apartment that was 4-bedroom, and we had 8 cars among us for 2 parking spots. So that's not what we're proposing tonight. And then we lived in Elk Grove before we moved here, and we moved here for the same reason, looking for that small town feel, which brings me to my next comment. I have never seen a small town that is made up of nearly all $1 million homes. That does not provide the small town atmosphere that you wanted. You like the charm of Lincoln. I like the charm of Lincoln because it is friendly, it is inviting, it is welcoming, it is accessible, it is full of the spectrum. It has families, it has grandparents, it's got everyone in between, and it has all walks of life. And what we threaten if we don't try to find housing to keep people here is then we really will lose our small town charm and our small town atmosphere, because we will become a very homogenous society with one socioeconomic standard and one type of career, you know, strata that is allowed to live here. And that doesn't create the charm that Lincoln has. And that's not who Lincoln has ever been. Lincoln's roots are agrarian and industrial. I don't know what part of high residential housing doesn't fit into that. So in terms of the narrative of why we came to Lincoln, let's remember what Lincoln is. And I personally chose it because of that. I love that it's rooted with feet on the ground, and I really want to keep that feeling here. And then the question was asked, would you want your family or would you want to live there? My answer is overwhelmingly yes. I actually begged my mom, who lived in Stockton, in a nice home on what, a third to a half acre lot. We literally had a forest in our backyard. She lives in condos in Lincoln now, high residential in Lincoln Crossing. Perfect for her. She's elderly. She doesn't need a yard. She didn't want a yard. It's lovely. Her neighbors take care of her. They take her trash out, even though we're like a mile away. It's a wonderful community. There's not crime there. There's not yards there. You know what there are? There's kids who ride their scooters. They play chalk in the sidewalks. Nothing is lacking. So I don't have this shared concerns of gangs or violent crime coming, because we're going to approve a lot map that allows for 13 units on an acre. It's not a thing. I have a large yard. I have a large lot and a court. You know where my children play? In the freaking street. I sometimes am bitter that they play in the street, because I'm like, get out of where the cars are, right? And they don't play in it alone. The only gang they're playing with is the gang of children from the rest of my community who are on scooters and skateboards with footballs and baseballs and basketballs, and they're causing a ruckus. And I love the sound of their ruckus. They're not causing problems. They're just being kids, and they're climbing trees, and they're, getting into childlike trouble that's part of growing up. So I hear your concerns. I just can't say that I share your concerns on it. Aside from that though, and I was going to ask, but Dan already covered, no. And I think that there's also misunderstanding about what we're actually doing right now. There's council meetings, and then when we have general business, that's just part of general business. Public hearing is a very specific type of process. It's a quasi judicial process, and there are very specific cans and cannots that apply to it. And there are legal specifications that apply to it, which is why I tried to clarify at the beginning of public comment that even though we say public comment, it's not a question time. It's you get to tell me your concerns, you get to tell us your testimony on the project, and then you sit down and we don't respond to it. We can't respond to it. It's allowing for, as Councilmember Carlson said, for those comments that are informed and based on fact under the purview of the project at hand. And it's a very narrow scope. I don't know if it would be helpful to go over what we are considering, what we're not considering. Like I might have my own personal opinions about not having a park. That's not under my consideration tonight. And I can't not approve a project because I don't like a park's not going to be built. That decision was made and it's not part of the map. We're literally only able to say, do we agree that we can approve this large lot tentative parcel map to subdivide this village, or do we not? And do we agree with it on the merits? And it can't be on I think crime could come. It would have to be on I have this statistic and there's this report from the area and there's this like development that is in this like community that has this like problem and it could come here. It has to be based on like something tangible. I can't vote based on fear or conjecture. I would be breaking the law if I did that. And I am not here to break the law. I don't want to go to jail. So I really think that part of it is just a misunderstanding of what we can vote on, what we can't vote on, and not to invalidate some of the concerns that might have been brought forward that might be valid, but aren't part of what is under our purview in this specific item. I don't know if I'm expressing it right. I'm trying to though, where it's, yeah, I think that really is what the list that Dan went through, that wasn't, I don't know if it was clear, that wasn't his own list. The list that he went through wasn't his opinion. It wasn't something that he was like, well, this is what I'll vote on and this is what I won't. It's literally the law. That list that he went through, that's what we're allowed to vote on tonight. And if it's not on the list, we're not allowed to consider it. And in terms of, there was a comment actually that said, well, you've amended it 5 times, you can amend it tonight. Well, it's not an item asking to be amended. It's asking for approval on something that they have legal entitlements to build on that are in accordance with our general plan, with the development agreement. It is in, they have entitlements, even if I didn't like, and I don't have a problem with what's being brought forward, I think is going to be great for our community. But let's say that I didn't like it. I would have to have a real reason to say no to it because they have legal entitlements to do what's proposed. And so I did want to kind of make that specification, which I think is what you were
Yeah.
really saying was, this is what I can vote on, this is what I can't vote on, this is what's before me. And to Paul's point, what is before us at this stage, because it's a multi-stage process, are maps. And I can't find any reason to not approve the maps as proposed. I have not seen one shred of evidence that there's anything that is, not according to what they've been asked to do. An example of that was I was reading the newspaper, I guess sometime this week, and there was a developer or a development somewhere in San Francisco where they built, 13 more units per acre than they were approved to do, and now they're having to pay a lot of money for it. That's something that you deny, right? This is not that. And so I did want to just kind of make those specifications that there are things that we're allowed to do, there are things that we're not, and that we're not to ignore you or be rude if you ask questions and we don't respond to them, because there are specific processes, and that is why I have to check nervously with I always call you Christine, so I have a hard time saying your last name, to make sure, did I open the public hearing right? Did I close the public hearing right? Because it's like legal checkboxes to make sure that we're actually doing it. So I guess that would be my comment, that I would be happy to have my family live in this development. If I didn't already have a home, I would be happy to purchase it, because the home prices right now are insane. And I got small kids. I would be thrilled to say, oh my goodness, I can actually afford a home in a community with like zero crime and wonderful people. Yeah, I'm in. So I don't know if it requires any, would anyone like to discuss among us? Or it feels like we all kind of are on the same page on like what's before us and what's not before us. If that's the case.
I have a question. I have a question about the process. I completely understand everything you just said, everything Dan said. We've been doing this for a few years, right? I understand. My question though is, because I keep hearing, well, they have entitlements and, legally, we can't really say no. There has to be a really good reason. Why, if that's really the case, if there's like no reason that we could say we don't like this or we don't approve whatever, that we could say no to, why does it even come before us then?
Because there are reasons, they just don't have them right now. The reasons are if they're not responsible, if they're cutting corners, like you want eyes at every level.
No, I get that.
Neither before us.
But we all know that once, this section gets approved, then it just moves forward. It might take a little bit of time, but nobody ever really says no. And my other concern is, we've been talking about police and fire, and I said this a couple weeks ago, that I'm not against building. I'm not. I like Lincoln small town too, but I'm not against building. I'm not, I have a good relationship with developers. It's not that. I feel like we are just digging ourselves a hole if we keep building before we can provide the adequate service for it. And that's a real problem for me. I'm not against the developer. I understand. I mean, I get it. I don't think that my husband grew up poor and he's not a criminal, right? I don't think high density automatically means crime. I get the concerns, but I don't necessarily think that. My concerns are we just keep pushing things along, and Mr. Schreiber said something which I spoke at the Women's Club today, and I made a comment about fixing issues from past leaders and past councils. And his comment really struck me. It's like, we keep talking about, oh, well, these past mistakes. When do we stop and fix it? When do we stop and say, let's just hold off for a second? I'm not against the developer. I'm sure these houses will be nice. They're not affordable, but I'm sure they'll be nice. My problem is, when do we give ourselves some breathing room before we can adequately support these neighborhoods with police and fire, before we continue to say, yep. That's my real concern. That's my real concern.
I think you raised real issues, but I don't think that's what's before us tonight.
But we approve this,
Your issues.
we approve this, and then in a little bit, they come back and we approve, and it just moves forward. It just moves forward.
But in every instance that we've, and this is going off, Christine, tell me to be quiet when I need to. Every instance that we've had where there's new projects that are coming that haven't had all of those specifications, where that we've had the opportunity to renegotiate and open up those development agreements, we've made them go into, we've tried to solve them. There's not always the opportunity to do that. And just so everyone is aware, which I know you are, if we are the ones who request the amendment, we pay dearly for it. If the developer requests it, they pay for it. And so when there's an opportunity on noting our lack of budget to fix problems when they come forward, we have done that. Part of it is there's just already been decisions and then we fix what we can moving forward. And I feel like we are really trying to do that. I share some of your concerns. I just don't think that that is what this is on our vote tonight.
So I think I would add that the no's come in the process. As it works its way through the planning process, there are a lot of no's. There are projects we never see, we never hear, because they are no's. They do not comply with our general plan. They are
Corners,
not.
they're not
All
meeting
of it.
things, they're
All
coming
of it.
back with
So
shoddy.
by the time something gets here, through the planning commission, through all of the steps that it has, there's very little left that is of issue.
No, that's a good comment because I know that our staff does a lot of due diligence because I get complaints.
Oh, our staff is great. Our
Right,
staff
and
is
then you're
great,
doing your
but-
job.
But there's, in the last several years that I've been involved, watching planning commission meetings, they don't say no to anything. There might be a couple that vote no, but they push everything through. They don't say no to anything.
You know, are we still?
If it meets the
Like we're-
requirements, how do they not do it?
Because maybe it's not good for Lincoln at that moment. Maybe it's not good for our community at that moment.
They also have checklists to, just like we do tonight, they have a box of checklists on this is what I'm allowed to
Okay,
make.
so, but when do we get to chart our own course?
When we
First-
plan our policy.
We're getting really off
That's what
subject.
I'm
done. I won't.
I want to make one last point.
Do it.
And the faster you want to fill the hole for the police department and the fire department, then you get these things built fast as you can. Because in 10 years, they're not going to really add anything other than normal. Remember the tax sharing agreement?
Yeah.
We got to get that up because that stays there forever once it's up.
Yeah, but I would like to see the developments that we have put into that element.
I think
to
we're
start
like
kicking in.
super out of
Okay.
like where we are like
Good work.
way off reservation now, so I'm gonna bring
Good
it
work.
back in.
Workshop.
Yeah, right. That's the end of my TED Talk. Your TED Talk. So with all of that, and I do think you've raised some valid concerns, but again, what is before us and the legal parameters of what is before us, and also a project that I think is well done. And I do think that we do this high density well. We have a few pockets of it in Lincoln. I have friends who live there. I have children who have good friends who live there. And it there sounds like separating. They're just communities full of families. I that's what we're voting on tonight, is creating housing for families and more people in our community. So with that, do I have a motion?
You represent the districts that will be most affected by this. I'm going to toss it to you.
Yeah, I'll do it. Okay. Adopt resolution 2020. Excuse me? No?
Yes. Go ahead and do it.
Okay, all right. Adopt resolution 2021-142 approving a large lot tentative parcel map to subsidize 12 Bridges Village 27 into 3 parcels. Want to do the second one too?
Do we do them one at a time, Christine? Please. Okay, so we take a roll. I
we need a
need a
second.
second for that, yeah. Right. And then we take a roll call. Okay.
Yes, and can I also include the CEQA analysis?
You want to do it?
Required pursuant to Government Code Section 65457A and CEQA Guidelines Section 15182. Projects pursuant to a specific plan and 15183. Projects consistent with a community plan or zoning, whereby a project which is consistent with the development density or a specific plan adopted pursuant to Title 17, Division 1, Chapter 3, Article 8 of the government code is exempt from further environmental review.
Just so we confirm that CEQA analysis is included in each of the resolutions, so it's not necessarily a separate item.
So it's inclusive in each one.
It's in the resolution that was moved on.
Okay.
We're okay then.
Yes.
So Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent, Councilmember Andriotta.
No.
Councilmember Joyner
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Okay, adopt, I can just do the second one, right?
Right.
Adopt resolution 2021-143 approving a tentative subdivision map.
That was 142.
Sorry, adopt resolution 2021-143 approving a tentative subdivision map to subsidize a portion of 12 Bridges, Village 27, excuse me?
Subdivide, not subsidize.
I'm sorry, to subdivide a portion of 12 Bridges, Village 27 into 184 single-family residential parcels.
Second,
Yes, Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
yes.
Councilmember Andriotta.
No.
Councilmember Joyner
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
We're good then, right? You have.
We have what we need. Thank you.
Okay, so we will move along to general business. Item 10A, adopt resolution 2021-144, approving a memorandum of understanding between the classified group and the city of Lincoln and related salary schedule. And our human resources director, Veronica Rupp, will be giving a staff report.
Good evening. The item before you is a request for approval of the successor memorandum of understanding, otherwise referred to as an MOU, between the classified employee group and the city, along with the related salary schedule. The classified group is represented by Local 39 and consists of various classifications, which include equipment mechanics, maintenance workers, refuse truck drivers, and water and wastewater technicians. The current MOU for this group expired on June 30th, 2021, after a 2-year term. The city and the group reached a tentative agreement on June 3rd, 2021, for a 3-year successor MOU. The significant agreements are as follows. The first agreements affect employee salaries and include 3% cost of living adjustments on July 1, 2021, 2022, and 2023. To ensure that the salaries for this group remain comparable with the local market during the 3-year term of this MOU, 1% market salary adjustments will be granted on July 1, 2022, and 2023. The last agreement affecting salaries is a newly established hazardous human waste pay. This is a $150 per month payment for employees who work in the Parks Division and are required to remove and or clean areas which have human waste present. The next agreement affects employee leave accruals. Leave accruals will be increased from 10 to 26 days per year to 11 to 26 days per year, as shown in the vacation accrual table on page 3 of the staff report. The classified group's memorandum of understanding will be effective from July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. The total cost of the contract over the term of the 3-year agreement is $807,901, allocated to various funds as shown on the table on page 4 of the staff report. For fiscal year 21-22, a budget augmentation of $121,013 will be needed. Future budgets will include the appropriate funding for years 2 and 3 of the agreement. This concludes my presentation, and I can now answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. All right, I'll bring it up to council to see if we have questions, and then I'll open it.
Oh, thank you for that. I really appreciate the efforts that we're making to bring up salaries and so we can. I appreciate the hard work you've done on this. You've done an amazing job.
Thank you.
Any others?
I want to thank them too. I mean, we have to actually pay competitive salaries, and unless we do, we're going to start losing people.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd echo that. Thank you so much for all your hard work. I think that it's really important what you're doing and you have my full support. And I really appreciate all the effort you're putting into it. And we open up for public comment.
So I don't have any hands raised, Mayor. Do we have any public comment? Don't see any hands raised.
All right, we'll close public comment. And do I have a motion?
Yeah, I move that we adopt a resolution 2021-144, approving a memorandum of understanding between the classified group and the city of Lincoln and related salary schedule.
Second.
I get a roll call.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Andriana.
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskin.
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
And Mayor Silhai.
Thank
All
you.
right, we will move on. Thank you. We will move on to item 10B, adopt resolution 2021-145, approving the reclassification of the police department's administrative analyst /PIO position to a public safety dispatcher position, the reclassification of one of the police department's authorized public safety dispatchers to a supervising public safety dispatcher, and the adoption of the salary schedule for the proposed supervising public safety dispatcher classification. And Ms. Rodriguez will also be giving that second.
Thank you. This is a request for approval of the reclassification of two positions assigned to the city's police department. The first requested change is a reclassification of an administrative analyst /PIO position to a public safety dispatcher position. Several years ago, the current incumbent of the administrative analyst position was reassigned from the city manager's office as the PIO to the police department to assist with the record management needs. This individual will be retiring in August, and to fill this vacancy, the police department is proposing to reassign one of its dispatchers who has police records management experience to perform the records management duties. To fill the vacancy that will be left by the dispatcher, the department is proposing to reclassify the administrative analyst position to a public safety dispatcher and assign it to the department's communications center. The second requested change is a reclassification of one of the police department's vacant dispatcher position that was approved with the 21-22 budget to a supervising dispatcher. Currently, the department's dispatchers are supervised by its police sergeant, which is not an effective use of his time. This concludes my presentation. I can now answer any questions you may have, but I did want to say there is no fiscal impact on this particular decision. This is all going to be absorbed in the existing budget for the police department.
And, any questions? I also have no questions. Oh, sorry, comment.
So I have no hands raised on Zoom. Do we have any public comments in the audience? I don't see any, Mayor.
Right, we'll bring it back up here. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt resolution 2021-145, approving the reclassification of the the police department's administrative analyst to PIO position to a public safety dispatcher position.
Second.
Councilmember Joyner.
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskin.
Yes.
Councilmember Andriana.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
And Mayor Silhai.
All right, we will move right along to
Congratulate Jill on her retirement.
please do. Thank you, Veronica. All right, item 10C, adopt resolution 2021-146. Do I need to read through all these now or in the motion, Christine? The motion will be fine. So this is regarding the oak tree maintenance project that has been on prior agendas. It's been brought back as we requested. Thank you very much, Mr. Scott, and Mr. Cross will be giving our.
I'll be giving a quick summary of the staff report since this is the third time this is before the council.
Sorry about that. I might get.
So at the last July 13th meeting, council requested additional information from staff regarding this CIP item or the oak tree maintenance cleanup. One was to obtain a professional report from a unbiased certified arborist that's not associated to the project, and to provide the schedule for work to be completed. Staff has brought forward a arborist report from Denise Britton, a certified arborist. That's part of the staff report attachment D, showing that the scope of work and start dates are acceptable and appropriate work for with regards to tree health. And attach the second attachments is the project timeline from A&E Arborist, showing the start date of September 20th. Again, within the acceptable timeline for maintaining opportunities of continuing health of the trees. The project again is 500 acres. It includes removing approximately 130 fallen trees, debris cleanup in and around our open space areas, both the dead and fallen trees and branches, trimming of dead branches on existing live trees, and canopy raising of trees for fire mitigation of branches no larger in diameter of 2 inches. And staff is recommending that council adopt resolution 2021-146, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with A&E Arborist in the amount of $362,880, and authorize the community development director to approve change orders not to exceed $72,576. And I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for going through those extra steps for us. I really appreciate it. Do my colleagues have?
I do have one question. So reading through the staff report, Steve, and I probably should have asked you before this, but I didn't have a chance. I read the additional arborist report, but I'm having a hard time locating the schedule of when things are done. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's not on here, I don't think.
Yeah, so right before the arborist report.
Oh.
Piece of paper before that.
Yes, so it would be attachments C or D, which would be the arborist report and the project timeline.
No.
Turn all the way down to page 63.
Okay.
I'll just have to skip it.
Okay.
Thought I had signed up in the beginning, like when I first looked at it.
Yeah, in summary, the work would begin on September 20th, work to be concluded dependent on weather conditions in March of 2022.
Okay, I see that. I'm sorry. I thought, well, that's helpful. But I thought you guys were going to give us a schedule of like starting September 20th, you're going to do this part. Next date, you're going to do this part. That's what I was looking for. That's why I didn't.
We apologize for that. When further discussions with the arborist and the later dates of start, it basically determined that this would be a single phase project. So as they move through the 500 acres, they would begin cleanup and trimming at the same time. So they would not have to return twice on the possibility of bad weather and further winter months. So it will be a single phase starting September 20th. We did have that evaluated by the independent arborist, and again, starting September 20th and doing the work as one single phase is acceptable and appropriate work for maintaining the health of the trees.
Will it be phased within that work? Will they do the ground clearance first and then come back and limb things up later in the project?
No, that would have been, if the project was able to start earlier, that was the concept. But as we move farther into the later months, the idea is to just go through one time.
Okay, so what about, so I get clearing up fallen branches, dead trees, trimming off dead branches. What about raising the canopy? Was that going to be towards the end, or is that something we decided not to do?
No, that's something that will be done starting September 20th
So the whole project moved.
Yes.
back in
It
time.
would have started in August. We're now almost October. So it's moved back.
So
correct?
the ground clearance and the removal of the fallen debris would have occurred July, August, and the tree raising would have been in the later September, October. But now that we've pushed everything to September 20th, they'll just begin the project on September 20th.
My only lingering concern is if we have another fall like last year and it's very, very dry and there's fire risk. And I know that you said that we will have appropriate accoutrements and equipment there to make sure that we mitigate that. But
Yeah.
it was, you know, on my day job, I have resource conservation districts and it was brought up on a call. You know, I certainly hope nobody is doing this work right now because it'll spark fires. Clearly, we're not right now. This is fall. This is not the same thing as mid-July. I'm glad we moved it back, but it's possible that September will be very dry also. And so I just want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence to not start fires.
And regardless of the start time, they will be required to have a fire suppression equipment, a water tender, and hand tools on site during the time of work.
Thank you. Any further questions up here?
the normal, if you were gonna do normal trimming, the timeline is November, right? Starting November to,
If you,
I looked that up. If you were gonna just do normal pruning on a live healthy tree, it's November to March, right?
I truthfully, looking it up,
That's why I'm asking. I said, that's right. Yeah, that was my question. If you were doing normal pruning, the acceptable time is November to March, right? That's not what we're doing. I know that's not what we're doing.
And to answer the question, and we did do a Google search and you can find 30 different answers to that question. But no earlier than September and usually no later than March.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
But whether it's October, whether it's September, October, November, you get probably 10, 10, 10.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate moving it back.
Yeah.
Hopefully that will alleviate the concerns. I think this is a good compromise.
Yeah, I appreciate the due diligence. I think that it was an easy fix to alleviate some significant concerns, and I appreciate the patience. Public comment?
Yes, Mayor. So I do have a hand raised. Mr. Garabedian, please go ahead.
Thank you. Mike Garabedian, putting on my Bachelor of Science degree in Forestry and Conservation. I wasn't at the prior meeting, so I would probably know more now if I did. I guess we're talking only about public lands. I'm assuming that. And somewhere in here it refers to a tree map. There's an oak tree map, but I'd like to be able to see where the properties are, where this is going to be. I assume there's some way to find that out. The question of moving up the canopy, I would assume there's discretion there because maybe the 20-foot should be a maximum. There were some trees, obviously, that an arborist or forester would recognize it's not appropriate to just arbitrarily cut up to 20 feet. Some trees that would not be appropriate. So yeah, the purpose of that I think is pretty well explained here, that it has to do with fire prevention, but there's a need, of course, for that to be coordinated with whatever the city's doing on the lower vegetation, the grass and so forth. So I look forward to finding out how to see the properties. Perhaps it's everything open space designated on the general plan. Look forward to finding out about that so I can take a look at, out of curiosity, some of the properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see any other hands raised. So we do have a couple of cards. Stan Nader.
Mayor and Council, my name is Stan Nader. I live in 12 Bridges. When this item was before you last, I want to thank Councilman Joyner for asking the city attorney to ascertain her interpretation of the municipal code related to this item. I want to thank Councilmember Andriotta for asking for second arborist report, and I will speak to that a little bit. I want to address the city attorney's interpretation of the municipal code. The section that's cited in the staff report is 18.69.030, titled Restoration and Replacement of Trees. Restoration is rebuilding, not tearing down. Replacement of trees is planting. If you look at section 2 of that particular part of the code, it mentions replanting twice, planting once. It never mentions maintenance. In the staff report, it says specifically, it states maintenance. It does not. So I think you need to be very careful about approving this project because you may be accused of misuse of public funds. Now, addressing the second arborist report. With a little bit of research, found that this company has a reputation of giving you what I mentioned before is happens with consultants, you pay them and they give you what you want to hear. This was on full display yesterday at the Placer County Board of Supervisors appeal hearing for Rancho Del Oro Estates. The county hired an arborist who sat directly behind the developer and his attorney. The attorney, prior to the hearing, came over and spoke to her. During the hearing, the arborist slid down and whispered in the ear of the attorney. When the board asked her to get up and answer a question, she gave an answer that was supportive of the developer. So I again tell you that you get what you hear when you hire certain individuals. And one last thing. I assume since the city was served this on July 9th, you all are aware that you're being sued over the Oak Tree Mitigation Fund. I would caution you to think long and hard because it's the same group of individuals that won on the water lawsuit. And if I was a betting man, I wouldn't be betting on the city on this one.
Any other comment?
Yes, Mayor, Albert Shiver.
Albert Shiver, Moore Road. Since this isn't public comment and it's not a hearing, I'm assuming we'll get our questions answered, but that's
It says public comment.
no, like citizens addressing the council, public comment. Anyway,
If that's what you're.
that's not gonna, whether you answer them or not, it's your call, it's transparency. It's been asked before, why now, why not 10 years ago? The trees were down then. And the answer given because of fire hazard is bogus in my opinion. My second question is, was the second arborist paid? Because to Mr. Nader's point, you get what you pay for in that case. And then 2 hours and 19 minutes, 2 hours and 19 minutes. Into the last city council meeting, there were comments made by the city attorney. It's my opinion that the city attorney is not here to help you, not here to help us, the citizens. She's here to help herself. I can give you an extended version of why, but since I only have a minute and a half left, she's positioned herself on all these committees, and you guys have praised her all the way. Earlier tonight was an example of that, Ms. Sohai. You praised her for the homeless stuff she's done.
Keep your comments specific to the agenda item.
I am.
Right.
I am. Anyway, you praised her for the homeless, and it's my understanding the homeless has gotten worse under her leadership. But yet you praise her over and over. So here we go. 2 hours and 19 minutes into the last city council meeting, she made comments about all of the insurance you have for if this project starts a fire. And I just got sick to my stomach because that's like saying I got car insurance. I can run into anybody I want. And so she sat there, and I don't want to put words in her mouth. I would like her to answer. If you burn down somebody's house with this project, the city's covered, but are you going to cover that house and their items or whole subdivision? I mean, what's the logic in doing this now? Because to say we have insurance so we can go ahead and do it is totally out of line, in my opinion, and not the way insurance is supposed to work, and not the way a city should be run with its citizens. Thank you.
Any others?
No, Mayor, I don't have any hands raised. I don't see anybody else in the public.
All right, and we will bring it back up. to council. I would like to address two of the comments. One, I think we heard you, you and all other concerns, and that's why we're doing the project at the end of September and we're not doing it now. Because I share your concern about fires. It's a real concern, and I think it was heard and it was adapted, and we'll be handling it close to October, which is a much more reasonable time in my opinion. And then as to the restoration, I would just like to point out that the actual definition of restoration is to bring something back to its former state. And so the clearing of that is bringing back that habitat, bringing back those trees to how they should be. So I just thought that I'd make that distinction. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say?
I actually am curious about the comment about the arborist. Like, I read the arborist report and I thought it was fine, but I'm curious about the two comments. Like, did we pay them for that? And do they have a reputation for giving you what you pay for? Like, I'm just curious.
I hope we paid them.
Well, I'm sure we did. I'm just curious about the comment.
Yes, the city did execute a contract to pay for the professional services of an outside consultant. And no, we are not aware of that. And based on the resume as part of the attached arborist report, it's difficult to see someone who was on the committee that created the certification exam to be a certified arborist would be, and also was a president of the ISA, be someone that wouldn't be held, I would assume, a higher caliber professional.
I appreciate that. Paul, you look like you wanted
I
to.
want to give Christine an opportunity to speak to the maintenance language within the ordinance.
Again, I think as I stated at our last meeting, it's the language is specifically cited on page 2 of the staff report, citing section 18.69.030 sub paragraph 2 that states the fees collected pursuant to the ordinance may be used for the replacement of trees, new plantings, maintenance of existing trees, and maintenance of trees within the city's right of way.
She just read it, Mr. Nader.
All right. Any other?
Yeah, I got interested, probably, I don't know anything about arborists or anything else, but I know how to read reports and I know how to read scientific tables. Okay, so I got went down the rabbit hole, because here we have two people, well, from what I can tell from a resume, a world-renowned arborist and an administrator from Wildlife Federation. Okay, and reading the two letters from the Wildlife Federation, California Wildlife, scared the hell out of me, because here we have the first time around, she would point to a specific quote on how to prune trees, and that bothered me a little bit. Bothered me enough that I read it in total, not the quote, but the article, which, by the way, is the care of established oaks on home property. So it's for how do you maintain an oak for your house, not 500 acres of oak. So I have a hard time sizing that up. Then we got the second one that said that the valley oaks were almost extinct. They were near threatened, is what she said. Well, so I read the International Union of Conservation of Nature document talking about, it's called the Red Book, and it talks about the 91 species of oaks in the United States, of which 16 of them are seriously threatened. And that's, bad news. But we only have 2 oaks in this forest that we're working on. One's valley oak and the other one's live oaks. That they have a whole process they go through to determine how endangered something is, the oaks. They do it for everything, but oaks in this case. And at the bottom of the list, the least significant was called least concerned. The next one is data deficit, meaning there's an oak variation that they don't have enough data that they can make a decision. The next one is nearly threatened, not threatened yet, but they got some data. And then you go into vulnerable, endangered, or critical. Well, to me, there's a lot of difference between near threatened and endangered. Live oaks are a little concerned because they can't get any, they wouldn't be in the book. And their threats are drought. Well, this is like valley oaks. Their 3 threats are droughts, grazing, and what they call fire suppression, which is the non-removable of ground stuff. 3 things: drought, we don't have any control of. Fire suppression, we do have. I don't know whether this was preserved property, and maybe we couldn't have, but anyway, and grazing. Live oaks, their threats are grazing, fire suppression again, and loss of a habitat, which means buildings. I took that to mean that neither of these oaks are threatened with extinction, that we probably should clean up under them. And in reading about how to prune trees, the oak trees, you're not supposed to top them. Well, I didn't see anything about topping. I didn't even see anything about pruning, which is usually cutting tips off, except where we talk about the 2-inch, cutting it back to 2 inch. Anyway, so I did enough research to, first of all, I think verify that the arborist that we paid for, the arborist at the end of the thing, is sufficient enough stature, wrote clearly enough, and has enough articles published that it was valid. And the letters, the emails we got that referred to other documents were very, 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 as I say, I'm sorry. I went through well, I enjoyed that kind of stuff, but I did go down a rabbit hole. No.
I do have one more question. I'm not trying to get oppositional. And I did ask this question the last time, and I don't know if I actually got an answer or not. And I'm not asking it because they asked it. I'm curious. So I think the fire suppression thing is important, right? And I appreciate the fact that staff came back and moved the date. I'm not really sure what the objection is now. We're not doing it in July. We're doing it in September, almost October. I think that's reasonable. My question that I asked the last time was, why haven't we ever done this before? We've had bad fire seasons in the past. Why are all of a sudden, I'm not saying we shouldn't, I'm curious, why all of a sudden now? Why haven't we done this in the past? Or when was the last time we did, I guess? That's a good question.
Last time the open space clearance is, I do not believe in our recent history that we have done a project similar to this. But I believe it's one of those things that where it's resource driven and time and whether other priorities come up. But with coming to the second worst fire season, coming off the second worst fire season, I think it put it into the heads of everyone on staff that this is a significant issue that needed to be addressed. It's hard to delay due to resources and staffing when we've experienced what we've experienced in these past 2 to 3 years.
I think that's statewide. Nobody talked about urban
forestry, yes.
Wild land interface, which is what this is.
In like the last 5 years, with that
Yeah,
became like an actual term that.
Since the campfire.
And I think there's been a shift across the board in the mindset of these preserve areas. It was always believed that these down limbs become habitat and that they are something to be desired that you don't want to touch. I can tell you that I've seen fuel load building up under these oak trees that I've never seen before. If this were on my private land, I'd be out there cutting that up as quickly as possible in the appropriate timing, but.
And just to, another item that I discussed previously, that this area, or the areas, the 500 acres that are being, that are part of the project, were part of the grazing that had just recently occurred. So although September, we are delaying it a little bit, it should have minimal growth to have more of a fire concern. If we waited till next season, we didn't have to ensure grazing before we would do this again because of fuel load.
The only reason you'd have any growth is if there was a rain, and that would all upgrade. So
exactly.
Also, and Dan, I might be wrong, and this is going a little down the rabbit hole also, but fire suppression, when it talks about the threat to live oaks, it's not necessarily the act of maintenance mitigation, but actually fire itself shapes live oak woodlands. And so it's talking about like making fire not happen, because fire itself, it's getting super nerdy, but that's part of. So it could be fire suppression, but also there's like, if you look it up, there's gonna be lots of articles on fire and then the fire's role in shaping wild woodland live oak habitat. And obviously we live here and fire's not an option.
Well,
So
and it could simply mean exactly that as a fire rolls through there and bulldozers roll to stop the fire. That
which is actually the it's getting in the weeds. The bark of the trees and the way that they respond and the way that they regenerate and all that. In any case, do we have, are we all talked out on this item?
Christine, do you need a full?
I love our oaks, so. Do you need, how would you like?
Number, you want the whole?
Yeah, how would you like the resolution read for the motion?
Why don't we go ahead and just do the whole number?
Okay. Adopt resolution 2021-146. Determine that the oak tree maintenance project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to section 15301, class 1 existing facilities. 2, authorize the city manager to execute a contract for construction with, it always seems strange to me that the term is construction, with A&E Arborist Tree Care, Inc. in the amount of $362,880 for oak tree maintenance project. Capital improvement projects, CIP 468, and authorize the community development director to approve change orders not to exceed $72,576.
Second.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskit,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Thank you. All right, we are on to item 11, council initiated business. Do any of my colleagues have any council initiated business to bring tonight? We'll start same order, Holly.
I have two quick things. I was told today by Lee Basham, who was our civic auditorium manager, that the civic auditorium is 100 years old this year.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
he thought it would be, he thought it would be a great idea for us to write up an article for the newspaper or whatever, or do some kind of recognition of that. So I just wanted to bring that forward. I don't know where the research on that is or what, but
Great big plaque on the side of it that says.
yeah, no, but I mean, like, how it's been used in the past or whatever. So I thought maybe we could, put a
Sally
little
Russell.
something together.
Shirley Russell.
Yeah, anyway, so I just want to bring that to your attention. I thought it'd be nice if we read an article for that. And then Yeah.
Some great old photographs.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then going back to our previous conversation, when it's appropriate, I would like to know why the Economic Development Committee has not been meeting. That's all I have.
All right, Councilor Gordon. Councilor Crosskin?
I have no.
Yeah, so I have nothing tonight. Information items, we'll do the same thing, Councilmember.
I want to talk about there was a signing ceremony for the PCCP last Thursday, I think it was well attended by all of the partners in the PCCP as well as a lot of people. And it was great to finally put to bed all of the planning for the PCCP and actually start it. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Yeah, you did a great job.
You did a really good job representing us. Thank you. I also have nothing. You look like you would like to speak, so Mark, we're all done.
How are you? I've just been too quiet tonight. I had to have time to speak, right? A couple things. First of all, I just want to acknowledge all the work that our IT staff and our city clerk did to get this set up in here tonight, and it worked remarkably well.
Thank you.
Kudos to Gwen for me. I have 3 inputs because I said, please don't make me.
The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that I realized today that on my calendar, it didn't show a workshop on August 3rd. And I noticed that apparently it got bumped to August 5th because of Night Out. So I'm supposed to put out an agenda for that by the end of the week. And I'm not sure what items we have for workshop. I do have a report back on that Jim is working on ARPA infrastructure projects, water, wastewater. And that's certainly worth talking about. I know that we've got several closed session items that we may want to divide them between the 5th and the 10th, just to make it more reasonable to get through the list, so we can use some of the time that way. An intriguing thought for me, I thought that Vice Mayor's question tonight about when and how do we deal with the timing of park development and public safety improvements, that was a really good question. It didn't fit in the middle of that public hearing, obviously, but the question was entirely valid. I wasn't supposed to have been an editorial comment. It was very awkward if I made it sound like that. But it's a very legitimate question that I know I could do 15 minutes on. And it might be worth having a little bit of a discussion about how we do that long-term planning and strategy, and how that plays into the day-to-day ongoing. There's both philosophical answers to that, and there's also some very technical, practical answers to that. And if you're up for a discussion of something like that, I'll spend a little bit of time putting that together. And then I wondered if there was anything else the council particularly wanted to have us bring back on that.
We try to keep those not very broad so that we can have more discussion. That's 3 things right there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, and with that, 8:45, we will adjourn. Thank you so much to all. Thank you for making it work. Really appreciate it. It was great to be back.
Except for
Weird.
the fact that I've kicked this dais 3 or
I know,
4 times. I don't
I-
remember it being so shallow.
I literally like all day. Just from community, like, I've yet to figure out how to feed myself.